The sound of her laughter echoing through my hallway made my skin crawl. I was curled up on our Italian leather sofa, the evening news droning in the background, when I heard Marcus's key turning in the lock. But he wasn't alone. "Clara, honey!" His voice rang out in that sickeningly fake, cheerful tone he'd been using for weeks now. The same tone that made me want to throw something breakable at his perfectly styled head. I looked up from my wine glass to see my husband of 12 years standing in our marble foyer, water dripping from his expensive suit. And clinging to his arm like a designer parasite was Jessica Chen, his so-called colleague from the marketing department. Both of them were soaking wet from the sudden storm that had hit downtown. But what really caught my attention was how her manicured fingers were still wrapped around his bicep. Like she had every right to be there. Like she belonged in my house. "Jessica's car broke down," Marcus announced, running his hand through his damp hair in that gesture I once found charming. "And with this weather?" He gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, where rain was battering the glass, like nature itself was trying to break into our perfect suburban fortress. "She'll have to stay the night," he finished, not even bothering to make it sound like a question. I watched Jessica standing there in our living room, designer heels clicking against the hardwood floors as she shifted her weight. Water was literally dripping from her honey blonde hair onto the Persian rug, the one my mother had given us as a wedding gift 13 years ago. "Of course," I replied, forcing my lips into what I hoped resembled a smile. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs, so hard, I was surprised they couldn't hear it. "The guest room is always ready." I took another sip of my Chardonnay, letting the cool liquid calm my racing pulse. After all, I was Clara Martinez-Thompson, senior partner at Hartwell & Associates law firm. I'd faced down hostile witnesses and manipulative opposing counsel. I could handle one cheating husband and his obvious mistress. But then, Marcus did something that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. He looked at me with those cold blue eyes, the same ones I'd fallen in love with during our college years, the ones that used to look at me like I was his entire world, and said words that would haunt me forever. "Actually, Clara, why don't you take the guest room tonight?" I blinked. Surely I'd misheard him. The wine must have affected my hearing. "Excuse me?" I set my glass down on the coffee table with more force than necessary. Marcus had the audacity to look slightly embarrassed, but he pressed on. "Jessica has been having terrible back problems lately. You know how demanding her job is. All those presentations and long hours." He glanced at her with what he probably thought was subtle concern. She nodded along, playing her part perfectly. "Our mattress is so much better for support," he continued, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. "You understand, don't you, sweetheart?" The audacity of it hit me like a physical blow to the chest. My own husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me until death do us part, was asking me to give up my own bed, in my own house, for his mistress. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to laugh and say he was joking, but he just stood there, water still dripping from his suit, looking at me expectantly. Jessica finally spoke up, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Oh, Marcus, I couldn't possibly—" No, Marcus interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "Clara doesn't mind, do you, honey?" The way he said honey made my stomach turn. It was the same endearment he'd whispered in my ear on our wedding night, the same word he'd used when he told me he loved me every morning for 12 years. I looked between them, my cheating husband and his brazen mistress, and felt something inside me snap. Not break, exactly, snap. Like a rubber band stretched too far, too fast. But I didn't scream. I didn't throw my wine glass at the wall. I didn't do any of the things a normal woman might do when faced with such blatant disrespect. Instead, I smiled. "Of course not," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Anything for Jessica's back problems." I stood up gracefully, smoothing down my silk blouse, and walked toward the stairs. "I'll just grab a few things from the bedroom." "You're an angel, Clara," Marcus called after me, relief evident in his voice. He actually thought I was going to let this slide. Poor, stupid Marcus. As I climbed the stairs to our master bedroom, the room I decorated with such care, the room where we'd made love countless times, the room where I'd nursed him through the flu last winter. I could hear them whispering below. "Are you sure she's okay with this?" Jessica's voice trying to sound concerned. "Clara's always been understanding," Marcus replied. "She knows how important work relationships are." Work relationships? Is that what we were calling adultery now? I packed a small overnight bag, moving mechanically through our walk-in closet. Pyjamas, change of clothes for tomorrow, toiletries. The routine actions helped calm my mind, helped me think clearly. Because here's what Marcus didn't know, what nobody knew except me. I'd been expecting this moment for weeks. The late nights at the office, the sudden interest in his appearance, the way he'd started putting his phone face down during dinner, the credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to, for amounts that suggested he was buying dinner for two. I'm a lawyer, for God's sake. I know how to gather evidence. But this, asking me to sleep in the guest room so his mistress could have our bed, this was a new level of disrespect. This was Marcus practically spitting in my face and expecting me to thank him for it. I paused at my vanity, looking at my reflection in the antique mirror. 34 years old, auburn hair still thick and shiny, green eyes that Marcus used to say reminded him of emeralds. I'd kept myself in shape, kept myself attractive for him. And for what? So he could humiliate me in my own home. The guest room was at the far end of the hall, deliberately positioned to give visitors privacy. As I walked past our bedroom door, I could hear Marcus and Jessica talking quietly downstairs, probably planning their romantic evening. The guest room was nice enough. I'd decorated it myself with soft blues and whites, wanting it to be welcoming for family visits. The queen-sized bed was comfortable, though nothing compared to our king-sized memory foam mattress with its Egyptian cotton sheets. I set my bag on the dresser and sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. My husband had kicked me out of my own bedroom for another woman. The house was eerily quiet now. I could hear the storm still raging outside, rain pelting the windows like angry fists. Occasionally, a flash of lightning would illuminate the room, followed by the rumble of thunder. But it was the other sounds that made my blood boil. The soft murmur of voices from downstairs, the clink of glasses. Marcus was probably opening the good wine, the bottle we'd been saving for our anniversary next month. The creak of floorboards as they moved around the kitchen, making themselves at home, in my home. I lay down on the guest bed, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was too soft, nothing like the firm support I was used to. Every spring seemed to dig into my back, a constant reminder of where I didn't belong. As the hours passed, the sounds from downstairs gradually moved upstairs. I heard them walking past my door, Jessica's high heels clicking, against the hardwood floor Marcus and I had chosen together during our renovation 3 years ago. Then, I heard our bedroom door close, and that's when the real torture began. The walls in our house weren't as thick as they should have been, something I'd never noticed before tonight. Every sound seemed amplified in the darkness. The bed creaking, muffled voices, laughter that made my skin crawl. My husband was making love to another woman in our bed, 20 feet away from where I lay listening to every moment of my humiliation. I pressed my pillow over my ears, but it didn't help. The sounds seemed to seep through the walls, through my bones, settling deep in my chest like lead weights. This was rock bottom. This was the moment when I realized that my marriage, the thing I'd fought so hard to protect, the relationship I'd invested 12 years of my life in, was not just over. It was a joke, but lying there in that uncomfortable guest bed, listening to my husband betray me with another woman, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to transform into something else, something colder, something calculating, something dangerous. By the time the house finally fell silent around 2 a.m., I had made my decision. Marcus thought he was clever. He thought he could manipulate me, humiliate me, and I'd just take it like a good little wife. He thought I'd smile and nod and pretend not to notice while he destroyed our marriage right in front of my face. He thought wrong. I reached for my phone and began typing a text to my assistant. "Sarah, clear my schedule for tomorrow morning. I need to make some urgent appointments." because tomorrow the real game would begin, and Marcus had no idea what was coming for him. I didn't sleep a wink. By 6 a.m, I was already dressed in my sharpest business suit, the charcoal grey Armani that made me look like I could tear someone's throat out in court. Because today, that's exactly what I planned to do. The house was still silent as I crept downstairs, my heels muffled by the Persian runner Marcus had insisted we buy last Christmas. Their clothes were scattered across our living room floor like evidence at a crime scene. Jessica's red dress draped over my antique armchair, Marcus's tie hanging from the lamp my grandmother left me. Disgusting. I grabbed my laptop bag and car keys, then paused at the front door. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see the empty wine bottle on the counter. My 2015 Bordeaux, that cost $800. The bottle I'd been saving for our anniversary. They'd drunk my anniversary wine while planning to fuck in my bed. Perfect. Another nail in Marcus's coffin. The drive to downtown was therapeutic. Rush hour traffic gave me time to organise my thoughts, to compartmentalise my emotions the way I'd learned to do in law school. Personal feelings in one box, professional strategy in another. And, oh, did I have a strategy? My first stop was Hartwell and Associates, where I'd built my reputation as the lawyer you called when you wanted to destroy someone's life legally. Sarah, my assistant, was already at her desk with my coffee. Black, 2 sugars, the way I'd trained her. The emergency appointments you requested, she said, sliding a folder across my desk. James Mitchell at Morrison and Associates is available at 9. Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the forensic accountant, can see you at 11. Perfect. I opened the folder, scanning the details. And the other thing I asked for? Sarah's expression grew serious. The private investigator you mentioned, David Chen, he's Jessica Chen's brother. I felt my blood pressure spike. What? I did some digging after you texted last night. David Chen, the PI you've used for client cases, is Jessica's older brother. Same last name isn't a coincidence. I confirmed it through LinkedIn. I sat back in my leather chair, processing this information. The private investigator I'd planned to hire to document Marcus's affair was related to his mistress. Get me Rebecca Torres instead, I said, naming the second best PI in the city. And Sarah? Not a word about any of this to anyone. Of course, Miss Martinez. At 9 a.m. sharp, I was sitting across from James Mitchell, the most ruthless divorce attorney in 3 states. His corner office overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows that made him look like a shark surveying his territory. Clara Martinez, he said, standing to shake my hand. I've heard excellent things about your work, though I admit I'm surprised to see you here as a client rather than opposing counsel. Life has a twisted sense of humour, I replied, settling into the chair across from his massive mahogany desk. I need a divorce. Fast, thorough, and devastating. James leaned back, fingers steepled. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about last night, about the months of suspicious behaviour, about finding Marcus and Jessica together in compromising situations I'd photographed with my phone. But I saved the best for last. 3 months ago, I discovered something interesting on my husband's laptop. James raised an eyebrow. Oh? I pulled out a flash drive from my purse. Marcus has been embezzling money from his company's client accounts. Nearly $200,000 over the past year, funneled into a joint account he opened with Jessica. The lawyer's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. You have proof. Bank statements, email correspondence, transaction records, everything. I slid the drive across his desk. They've been using stolen money to fund their affair. Weekend getaways to Napa, expensive dinners, jewellery for her that I'm sure she's wearing right now. James was quiet for a long moment, reviewing the documents on his computer. Finally, he looked up with something that might have been admiration. Mrs. Thompson, in 30 years of practice, I've rarely seen evidence this comprehensive. Your husband is looking at serious federal charges. That's the point, I said coldly. I don't just want a divorce. I want him destroyed. By 11 a.m., I was sitting with Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a forensic accountant who looked like someone's sweet grandmother, but had the investigative skills of the FBI. She spread Marcus's financial records across her conference table, like a puzzle she was eager to solve. Your husband is not nearly as clever as he thinks, she said, adjusting her reading glasses. Look at this pattern. Every withdrawal from the client accounts corresponds to a deposit in the joint account he shares with Miss Chen. Same amounts, same dates. She pointed to a series of highlighted transactions. He's been sloppy, no attempt to disguise the transfers, no shell companies, no offshore accounts. It's almost like he wanted to get caught. Or like he never imagined anyone would look, I suggested. Exactly. The arrogance is stunning. Dr. Hendricks pulled out another folder. But here's where it gets interesting. The account isn't just funded by embezzled money. Jessica Chen has been making deposits too. Significant ones. I frowned. From where? She works in marketing at a mid-level position. That's what I thought, but these deposits... She showed me a series of bank statements. 20,000 here, 15,000 there. All cash deposits, all from untraceable sources. A chill ran down my spine. What are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything yet, but I think we need to dig deeper into Miss Chen's finances. This much cash, regularly deposited, either means she has another source of income. Or, I prompted, or she's involved in something much bigger than a simple affair. I left Dr. Hendricks' office with more questions than answers, but also with a growing sense that I'd stumbled onto something far more complex than marital infidelity. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thanks for being so understanding last night. Jessica's already gone to work. You're the best wife a man could ask for. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I spent the rest of the afternoon at Rebecca Torres's office, a converted warehouse in the arts district that looked more like a tech startup than a PI agency. Rebecca herself was nothing like the stereotypical private investigator. She was young, stylish, and had the kind of sharp intelligence that made her dangerous. So, let me get this straight, she said, reviewing my notes. You want surveillance on both your husband and his mistress, but you're not just looking for evidence of adultery. That's right. I need to know what Jessica Chen is really up to, where her money comes from, who she associates with, what she does when she's not at work or with my husband. Rebecca nodded. Financial crimes often have layers. If your husband is embezzling and she's involved, there might be other players we don't know about yet. How long do you need? Give me a week for basic surveillance. 2 weeks if you want the full picture. She leaned forward. But, Clara, if this goes where I think it might go, you need to be prepared. Once we open this door, there's no closing it. I thought about Marcus's smug face when he'd asked me to sleep in the guest room, about Jessica's manicured hand on his arm, claiming territory that wasn't hers, about the sounds I'd heard through the walls of my own home. Open the door, I said firmly. Kick it down if you have to. As I drove home that evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognise. Clara Thompson? The voice was male, unfamiliar. Speaking. My name is Agent David Foster, FBI Financial Crimes Division. I understand you may have information relevant to an ongoing investigation. My heart stopped. I'm sorry, what? We've been investigating irregularities at Pinnacle Marketing Group for several months. Your husband's company. We received some interesting anonymous tips, and your name came up as someone who might have access to relevant documents. I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands shaking. Agent Foster, I think we need to talk. I think so too, Mrs. Thompson. How soon can you meet? As I sat there on the side of the highway, watching other people drive home to their normal lives, I realised that my carefully planned revenge was about to become something much bigger. Marcus thought he could humiliate me and get away with it, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd underestimated exactly who he was dealing with. The FBI field office looked exactly like you'd expect. Sterile, grey walls, fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly dead, and the kind of security that made you feel like a criminal just for walking through the door. Agent David Foster was nothing like the FBI agents in movies. Mid-40s, average height, the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which, I realised, probably made him very good at his job. Mrs. Thompson, thank you for coming in on such short notice. He led me to a small conference room with a table that had seen better decades. Coffee? Please. I needed caffeine to process whatever bombshell he was about to drop. Foster slid a manila folder across the table. How much do you know about your husband's work at Pinnacle Marketing? The basics. He manages client accounts, handles their advertising budgets, coordinates with creative teams. I paused. Though apparently he's also been stealing from those accounts to fund his affair. That's what we thought initially. Foster opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos that made my blood run cold. But Marcus isn't just embezzling, Mrs. Thompson. He's laundering money for a much larger operation. The photo showed Marcus meeting with men I'd never seen before. Expensive suits, expensive cars, the kind of people who looked like they'd stepped out of a crime thriller. In one photo, he was shaking hands with a man outside a warehouse. In another, he was accepting a briefcase from someone whose face was deliberately obscured. Those client accounts he's been stealing from? They're shell companies. Fake businesses designed to move dirty money through legitimate channels. Foster pointed to a transaction record. Your husband has been processing nearly $2 million in illegal funds over the past 18 months. I felt dizzy. $2 million? But I only found evidence of about $200,000. That's his cut. The money he's been skimming off the top. Foster's expression was grim. The rest goes to much more dangerous people. And Jessica? I asked, though I was beginning to suspect I already knew the answer. Jessica Chen isn't just his mistress. She's his handler. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Handler? She works for the Kozlov organization. Russian money laundering operation that's been on our radar for years. They recruited your husband 18 months ago, right around the time you said his behaviour started changing. Everything clicked into place. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden influx of cash that Marcus had explained as performance bonuses. He hadn't just been cheating on me. He'd been living a double life as a criminal. Mrs. Thompson, we need your help. Foster leaned forward. Your husband is small fish, but he's our best shot at getting inside this organisation. We need someone close to him. Someone who has access to his communications, his schedule, his personal habits. I laughed bitterly. Agent Foster, my husband kicked me out of our bedroom last night so his criminal handler could sleep in our bed. I don't think I qualify as close to him anymore. Actually, that might work in our favour. Foster pulled out another document. We want you to file for divorce. Make it messy, make it public, make Marcus desperate. I already have filed, I said, pulling out my phone to show him James Mitchell's preliminary paperwork. This morning, Foster's eyebrows shot up. That's faster than we expected. I don't waste time when I'm angry. Good, because here's what we're proposing. You proceed with the divorce, but you drag it out. Make demands that force Marcus to liquidate assets, to move money around, create financial pressure that makes him sloppy. I studied the agent's face. And in exchange, full immunity for any unknowing participation in your husband's crimes. Protection if things get dangerous. And when this is over, you keep everything. The house, the assets, all of it. The government seizes Marcus's illegal gains. But your legitimate property remains yours. It was a good deal. Almost too good. What's the catch? Foster hesitated. The catch is that Jessica Chen is extremely dangerous. She's killed before Mrs. Thompson. If she realises you're working with us, she won't. I stood up, decision made. Because I'm going to destroy her first. That evening, I sat in my home office, the one room in the house that was purely mine, and planned my next move. Marcus was downstairs making dinner and humming like he didn't have a care in the world. The domesticity of it was nauseating. I pulled up his laptop remotely using the spyware I'd installed months ago. Yes, I'd been spying on my own husband. Sue me. Sometimes being married to someone requires the same skills as being a criminal defense attorney. His email was a goldmine. Messages from Jessica that made my skin crawl, not just because of their romantic content, but because of the subtle code words they used. The Chicago shipment arrives Thursday. Our mutual friend needs the usual assistance. Payment processing for the Richardson account. I forwarded everything to a secure folder, building a comprehensive record of their criminal activities. But it was Marcus's browser history that really caught my attention. He'd been researching divorce lawyers. Not just any lawyers, the kind who specialised in hiding assets during contentious splits. He'd also been looking into offshore accounts and property transfers. The bastard was planning to leave me with nothing. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Torres. "You need to see this. Can you meet tomorrow morning?" I was typing a response when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Marcus appeared in my doorway, still wearing the apron I'd bought him for his birthday last year. "Dinner's ready," he said, then noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff." I closed the laptop casually. "You know how demanding clients can be. Actually, there's something I wanted to talk to you about." Marcus stepped into the room, his demeanour shifting. "I've been thinking about us. About our marriage. Here it comes," I thought. He's going to ask for a divorce so he can run away with his criminal girlfriend. "I think we should take a vacation. Just the two of us. Rekindle what we had." His smile was so genuine, so perfectly performed that I almost believed him. "Maybe that place in Tuscany you always wanted to visit." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, matching his fake enthusiasm. "When were you thinking?" "Soon, very soon. I already looked into flights." He moved closer, and for a moment, he looked like the man I'd married. "I love you, Clara. I know I haven't been the best husband lately, but I want to make it up to you." After he left, I sat there shaking. Not from emotion, but from rage. He was planning to take me on a romantic vacation to Italy while laundering money for Russian criminals. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. I called James Mitchell. "Change of plans," I said when he answered. "We're not just filing for divorce. We're going nuclear." "What do you mean?" "I mean, tomorrow morning, I want you to freeze all of our joint accounts. File an emergency motion for exclusive use of the marital home. And I want you to request a forensic audit of every penny my husband has touched in the last 2 years. Clara, that's going to be expensive, and I don't care about the cost. I want Marcus to wake up tomorrow and find out that his entire world has imploded. And if he gets suspicious about the timing," I smiled coldly at my reflection in the darkened window, "then he'll make mistakes. And when criminals make mistakes, Agent Foster tells me they get caught." That night, as I lay in the guest room for what I intended to be the absolute last time, I listened to Marcus on the phone in his study. He was speaking quietly, but I could make out fragments. Complications. Might need to accelerate the timeline? Deal with the wife problem. The wife problem. That's what I'd become to him. Not the woman who'd loved him for 12 years. Not his partner in building our life together. A problem to be dealt with. Well, Marcus was about to learn exactly what kind of problem I could be. Because tomorrow, the real war would begin. And I had every intention of winning. The next morning arrived like a hurricane. I was sipping my coffee in the kitchen when Marcus's phone started ringing. Then it rang again. And again. By the fourth call, his face had gone pale as he stared at his banking app. "What the fuck?" he whispered, then louder. "What the fuck?" "Language, darling," I said sweetly, not looking up from my newspaper. "What's the matter?" "Our accounts. They're frozen. All of them." His voice was rising to a panicked pitch. "Clara, did you do something?" I finally looked at him over my reading glasses. "I filed for divorce yesterday. My lawyer felt it was prudent to protect our marital assets during the proceedings." Marcus's face went through several colour changes. White to red to purple. "You can't just freeze our accounts. That's our money. Actually, it's mostly my money. You know, from my successful law practice." I stood up, smoothing my silk robe. "The accounts will be unfrozen once we reach a settlement. Shouldn't take more than, 6 months. 6 months. He was practically hyperventilating. "Clara, you don't understand. I have obligations." "To whom?" I asked innocently. "Your employer. I am sure they'll understand." That's when his phone rang again. He glanced at the caller ID and his entire body went rigid. He answered with shaking hands. "Jessica, no, I can't talk right now." His face crumpled as he listened to whatever she was saying. "What do you mean they want payment today? The timeline was—" He caught me watching and stepped outside to continue the call. Through the kitchen window, I could see him pacing frantically, running his hands through his hair. When he came back inside, he looked like a dead man walking. "Clara, we need to talk." "I'm listening." I need you to call your lawyer. Tell him to unfreeze the accounts. I am afraid I can't do that. Marcus grabbed my shoulders, his grip tight enough to bruise. You don't understand. There are people, dangerous people, who are expecting payment today. If I don't deliver, let go of me. My voice was ice cold. Now, he released me, but kept talking, desperation making his words tumble together. I'll explain everything. The money, Jessica, all of it. But I need those accounts unfrozen right now. Marcus, I said calmly, you're scaring me. Maybe we should call the police. The suggestion hit him like a physical blow. No police. Look, I've made some mistakes, like sleeping with your colleague in our bed while making me sleep in the guest room. This is bigger than that. He was practically shouting now. This is life or death, Clara. That's when my phone rang. Rebecca Torres. Excuse me, I told Marcus, stepping into the hallway to answer. Rebecca? Clara, you need to get out of that house. Now. What? Why? Jessica Chen just left a meeting with 3 men who look like they eat people for breakfast. They're heading to your address. My blood turned to ice. How long do I have? 10 minutes. Maybe less. I hung up and walked back to the kitchen, where Marcus was frantically trying to access his frozen accounts on his laptop. Marcus, I said quietly, we need to leave. Right now. I can't leave. I need to fix this. He looked up at me with wild eyes. Clara, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The kind of trouble that gets people killed. Then we call the FBI. No. He slammed his laptop shut. You don't understand. These people have connections everywhere. Cops, judges, federal agents. If I cooperate, I'm dead. And if you don't cooperate? Marcus looked at me for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. Something cold and calculating that I'd never seen before. If I don't cooperate, they'll kill you instead. The words hung in the air between us like a death sentence. What did you just say? The payment I owe them. It's not just money, Clara. It's collateral. They want assurance that I won't run or cooperate with law enforcement. His voice was eerily calm now. So I gave them collateral. I gave them you. I felt the world tilt on its axis. You used me as collateral for your criminal debts? I had to. They were going to kill me. Marcus stood up, no longer the panicked man from moments before. But here's the thing. If you're dead, they can't use you as leverage, which means I'm free to disappear. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The vacation to Italy? You weren't planning to take me. You were planning to stage your tragic accidental death abroad, yes. But you had to go and file for divorce, didn't you? You couldn't just be a good wife and play your part. I backed toward the kitchen door, but Marcus was faster. He grabbed a knife from the block on the counter. I am sorry, Clara. I really am. But you forced my hand. That's when the front door exploded inward. FBI agents poured into our foyer like a SWAT team, shouting commands and pointing weapons. Marcus spun toward the commotion, knife still in his hand, and I used the distraction to grab the heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. I brought it down on his wrist with all my strength. Marcus screamed and dropped the knife, clutching his broken wrist. The agents swarmed him immediately, forcing him to the ground as they read him his rights. Agent Foster appeared at my side. Mrs. Thompson, are you hurt? I'm fine. I was amazed by how steady my voice sounded. But, Agent Foster, there's something you need to know. What's that? I smiled and it felt predatory. Jessica Chen isn't coming here to hurt me. She's coming to collect the evidence. Foster frowned. What evidence? The evidence I've been secretly gathering for the past 3 months. The evidence that proves she's not just laundering money. She's been embezzling from her own organisation. I pulled out a flash drive from my pocket. Skimming off the top of every transaction, building her own nest egg. The agent's eyes widened. How did you... I'm a forensic lawyer, Agent Foster. Following money trails is what I do. And Jessica made one crucial mistake. She underestimated the wife. As if summoned by our conversation, Jessica Chen's voice rang out from the front yard. Marcus, we need to talk. Through the window, I could see her approaching with 2 men, who looked exactly like Rebecca had described. The kind of people who solved problems with violence. Agent Foster spoke into his radio. All units, targets approaching, move to intercept. But I had a better idea. Agent Foster, let me talk to her first. Absolutely not. Trust me. I was already walking toward the front door. I have something she wants. I stepped onto our front porch, still wearing my silk pajamas and robe, looking like nothing more than a confused housewife. Jessica saw me, and her expression shifted to something almost pitying. Clara, she called out, still 50 feet away. Where's Marcus? We need to settle some business. He's inside, I replied loudly enough for her companions to hear. But, Jessica, before you go in, there's something you should know. She stopped walking, wariness creeping into her features. What? I know about the money you've been stealing from your bosses. Nearly $500,000 over the past year, transferred to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Jessica's face went white. Behind her, the two men exchanged glances. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice cracked. Bank records don't lie, Jessica. Neither do cryptocurrency transaction logs. I held up the flash drive. It's all right here. Every theft, every transfer, every lie you told your organization about missing funds. One of the men stepped forward. What is she talking about, Jessica? She's lying. Jessica's composure was cracking. She's trying to... The Chicago shipment from last month, I continued relentlessly. You reported it as $200,000, but Marcus's records show it was actually $350,000. Where did that extra $150,000 go, Jessica? The man's hand moved toward his jacket, and that's when the FBI agents revealed themselves. Spotlights flooded the yard, and heavily armed agents emerged from behind cars, trees, and neighboring houses. Federal agents, nobody move! In the chaos that followed, shouting, running, the sound of handcuffs clicking, I stood on my porch and watched my husband's entire criminal empire collapse in real time. Jessica was arrested trying to climb our back fence. The two men were taken down in our driveway, and Marcus was dragged out of our house in shackles, screaming about how I destroyed everything. As the last police car pulled away, Agent Foster approached me with something that might have been admiration. Mrs. Thompson, in 20 years with the Bureau, I've never seen a civilian dismantle a criminal organization quite so thoroughly. They made one mistake, I said, watching the taillights disappear down our street. What's that? I smiled, thinking about that night in the guest room, listening to my husband betray me in our own bed, the night that started this whole chain of events. They thought they could humiliate me and get away with it. They forgot that revenge is a dish best served with a side of life imprisonment. 6 months later, I was sitting in my renovated master bedroom. New mattress, new sheets, new everything. Reading the newspaper. The headline made me smile. Kozlov, money laundering, ring dismantled, FBI credits, anonymous tipster. Marcus got 15 years for money laundering and attempted murder. Jessica got 20 for embezzlement and racketeering. And me? I got the house, the cars, the savings accounts, and the satisfaction of knowing that the man who tried to make me sleep in the guest room was now sleeping on a prison cot. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. Sometimes it's getting everything.